Hey everyone, this is Andrew, and today I'm going to show you how to work with Superior Drummer in Logic Express 9. And so first I'm just going to show you how to open the program if you've never done it before. But you have to make a software instrument track by going up here into New Track. And then to activate Superior Drummer, you have to go into right here where it says Input Output. You select the piano one. Hold on, I have something in the way. Then you go down to AU Instruments, then you switch to Tune Track, Superior Drummer, and then you do Stereo. And now this Logic file has a lot of tracks, well, not that many, but a good enough amount to make it a little slower to open. And I also have some other programs open. So it should open a little faster when you try it. And this is actually my second Superior Drummer track. So that's why it has all this extra mumbo jumbo on the bottom. But when I open it, I always get this master volume and set it to somewhere around 0, maybe a little above. I always use the 14-inch bass drum just because I do metal music and it gives a little more clicky sound. I go up here into Tool Settings, go into Bass Drum Beater, and it's by default it goes to felt, a felt bass drum beater head, but I find the plastic one has a little bit more attack to it, and it's better especially for metal music. I always like to go over here and put on the first China sound just because there isn't a better one on here already. Then I go into the right side and I do this bottom stack. Alright, so that's my default settings, and I'm actually just going to delete this track because I already have a drum file open. This should speed stuff up a little bit. And then so you see here I have it set above the 0 mark, somewhere around 1. And then I have my stack here, my China over here, my bass drum set on the 14-inch, the bass drum beater set on plastic. Also another thing is I turn on this extra tom, but I leave all the other cymbals, the snare and stuff, and the ride on default. That's the stack sound. That's the China sound. And that's what the bass drums would sound like. Now when it comes to actually working with Superior and making drum tracks, you open up your piano roll, which is down here, and then you just click on whichever segment that you want to see. Now if you want to create a new segment, let me just find an empty space. You right click, create empty MIDI region, and then you make it whatever length you want. And so, as you see here, there are all these little dots, or these little rectangles that represent the actual hits. Sorry. And then up here there's this area called lists. You click on that. And you want to make sure it's on event. And if these other ones do different things, but when you set it to event, over here are all the notes that are in these segments. So if you highlight 2, well, so each one you click on is different. And usually if you highlight several, it shows them all in here. I guess not. So each one of these keyboard notes represents drums. So you can figure out which one is which by going in Superior. And you see down here it says instrument. Well, right now it's default, it always just starts on the kick drum. And it says C1, and this would be this hit over here. Sorry, I got some lag there. And you can go down this list and pick anything, so like symbol 1, which is this, yeah. And then it says E2, which DE, that's that. Alright. Now after doing this a few times, you'll start to just memorize where everything is. Like I always just know, go to C1 first, because I always, well not always, but I typically will start with the bass drum, or at least just one bass drum hit at the start of every bar, just to get started. And then I know that the snare is right here. And then The hi-hat is up here on C3, so you're pretty much always working in this area from C1 to C3. C1 being bass drum, C3 being hi-hat. Usually the cymbals are in this area, and then the toms descend starting around here, going down to around here. There's different snare hits, different bass drum hits, different hi-hat hits. And then to add notes to this, I'll show you. You hold the command button, and then it gets you this pencil shape, and then you just click. Then it adds that drum hit there. And if you want to change the volume, you go over here in the list segment that I had you open earlier, and when you hit a note or add a new one, it automatically highlights it. And then the volume is this value list here, and then you click the thing and drag it up and down. Usually for bass drum I do around 112, snare I do a little higher, 114, 115, cymbals around 100, and you can fool around with that depending on what you want to do. And delete that. And then what happens is, let's say if you solo this whole thing. You can click on different ones so you can follow the whole thing, or you can just highlight them all. Alright, and just to show you one more thing. So if I go over to this part of the song, you see this group of drum hits, and this, you kind of just start to know what it is. Like I can look at this and just say, oh, this is bass drum with a full-time pattern on the stack, and then descending toms, cymbals. So just by looking at it, you can get a good feel of what the actual part is. And if you want to get a little closer listen, you can solo it, of course. And if you want some tips on getting the drums to sound a little more realistic and less electronic, which I guess would be the opposite of realistic here, you can try to make it so that there's mistakes built into the actual track. So you can make it so that, not actual mistakes, but you make like this repeating bass drum pattern, you can make every other note slightly quieter, and by slightly I literally mean maybe 1 or 2 note values. And you just have to fool with this by ear, but you can figure it out. And it's the same thing with toms and cymbals. If you can just think of how a drummer would actually play the parts and which notes you would accent, you can translate those into Superior Drummer. And another little trick to go along with that is that by default, Superior has these humanization things that they add over here. And random, you know, just gives some randomness to the hits. Alternate makes it sound like 2 hands or 2 feet. Semi-sequence, which I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to do, but it kind of makes every hit slightly different. Not in the way that random does, much more dramatic. Velocity, volume, at least I think that's what they have it stand for, is that as you go faster, it makes it a little more difficult to have things be as loud. And this just controls how it sounds when it's soft. There's a little limit there. And I always turn semi-sequence off, especially for cymbals. You'll notice that when you have cymbals going over and over again, it'll almost sound like they're being hit at different angles, and it sounds very unnatural. So if you want to do that, you just dial cymbal 3, which is this guy here, and you just click it, and it turns off. Alright, so I hope this video helped you guys out with anything you were wondering about Superior Drummer. If you have any questions, I can make another one of these videos to answer any questions you guys might have. Alright, see you later.